Hi and welcome back to another Let's Talk About It video. I'm here in Beijing, so I'm recording this outside in this lovely area of Beijing, and I'm here because I'm actually going to a friend's wedding. But that's not the topic of this video. Now, a couple of days ago I uploaded a video saying how the US Department of Commerce had basically put a ban on other countries using Huawei AI semiconductors, and very quickly after they uploaded that, and somebody in the comments alerted me to this, they actually changed the wording. And before, the wording was very sort of that they will be breaking US export restrictions, but they've actually changed the wording now to the following. So in addition, BIS today announced actions to strengthen export controls for overseas AI chips, including issuing guidance alerting industry to the risk of using People's Republic of China advanced computing ICs, including specific Ascend chips. Now, Ascend are Huawei's AI chips, and the Ascend 910D is very, very close to the performance of one of NVIDIA's main chips. I think it's the H100. And then it continues, issuing guidance warning the public about the potential consequences of allowing US AI chips to be used for training and inference of AI models. Now, what this means is that the US have realized that there's no gap now between America's AI and China's AI, and the key is here that America don't want other people to use their AI, so they're trying to warn people against this. And thirdly, issuing guidance to US companies on how to protect supply chains against diversion tactics. Now, what that means is there are lots of middlemen who were selling NVIDIA chips to China, and that's always going to be the case. The more you try to restrict something, the more middlemen will pop up to try and stop it. Now, really what this amounts to is that I think they've changed the tone of this, because I think that China probably said to him, look, we've just made a trade agreement with you in Switzerland, and this basically is a bit of a slap in the face to us. So you really, if you continue along this path with this kind of tone, then you won't be getting a trade deal. Trump has basically tried to spin it that he's rescued China. He made a post on Truth Social, his own social media platform, that he did China a big favor by dropping the tariffs because China were about to collapse. But the reality of it is that it was going to hurt America far more than it was going to hurt China, because China supply far much more finished products, and not just finished product but components. So you might have a Ford production line that uses 5 to 10% of, say, components from China. Well, if those components are not arriving, or they're subject to a 145% tariff, what do you think will happen to those goods? Now, we see China, on the other hand, are in a much, much stronger position. They buy mainly agricultural products and some medical machinery from the US. Now, medical machinery, some of the most advanced, they probably can't manufacture at home, although they are catching up very quickly. Maybe they can, I'm not sure, because I don't have enough knowledge about medical equipment. This is like, scanners and ultrasound machines and this kind of thing. But generally, America have pretty much led, and Germany with Siemens have pretty much led in that field for a long time. But I do think China have either caught up or they're catching up. But if you know about that in the comments, let me know. But anyway, apart from that, China don't buy a lot of other things. They might buy things that people like I buy flour to make bread imported from the USA, but I can find that in other places. It's not a big problem. But I've noticed that China have already moved a lot of their soybean purchases to Brazil. They've moved meat to Australia. So already, and I believe they've signed like a 5-year deal with Brazil for soybeans. So that means that soybean purchases are not going to go back to the USA for at least 5 years. Now, what I suspect they've done this for, and Trump, I think there's rumors going around that Trump wants to use NVIDIA as a bargaining chip, if you forgive the pun, chip, semiconductor, same thing. He wants to use it as a bargaining chip with these other countries. And I think, this is just really not good to use these things as bargaining chips. I think, the world has already seen how unreliable that the US can be. Now, just jumping a little bit, in the last I think there's some data out in the last week that say container bookings in the week after Trump and China, America and China announced a sort of a 90-day freeze on higher tariffs. The effective 20-foot container bookings increased by 270%. I suspect that's people in the US that are buying stuff very quickly. Again, it's shipped into the US while the tariffs are lower, in case after that 90 days, something happens and those tariffs go back on. But I just think it's a bit of a joke that Trump is trying to spin it in the US to say that he has done China a big favour. And I feel sorry for a lot of those sort of Trump supporters who actually believe him. Now, the second thing, big thing that's happened since my last video I put up about 2 or 3 days ago is that Moody's, one of the largest credit rating agencies, has actually downgraded America's sovereign rating by 1 notch. So it's not a AAA anymore. I think it's AA1 or something like that. But this has really got Donald Trump angry, and he made a Truth Social post attacking Moody's, blah, 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 blah. But, you've only just got to look with a bit of common sense. America has a $37 trillion deficit, and that's rising at a rapid rate. The deficit is on target to be $2 trillion again this year. So within 18 months, their debt is looking at over 40 trillion. Now, one significant consequence of this downgrade is that it will make holding US debt slightly more risky from the point of view of those credit rating agencies. So this could push the bond yields up. Now, the 30-year bond is already at around 4.5%. And this is its highest for many, many, many years. Now, what this means is that this year America have to refinance about $9 trillion worth of debt. So they have to sell that debt into the international markets. But that means that they will need to pay a higher level of interest to the people that buy that debt. Now, something that's really interesting, China have stopped buying US treasuries. So they're out of the picture. And in fact, they're actually reducing their holdings because they don't want to be caught like Russia, where, America decide that they're going to put some sanctions and they seize some of that debt or stop paying the interest on it. So China are actually reducing their debt. Japan are the largest holder now of US treasuries. And it seems as though, Japan are having a very firm stance on these Trump tariffs, and I think that they're not going to be big buyers. It was rumoured that when there was a spike a couple of weeks ago in the bond yields, that it was because Japan sold off a huge chunk of their USTs. So I think they might be out of the market. And what's really interesting, the UK has overtaken China as the second largest holder of US Treasury bonds now, and I find that a little bit crazy, really. That I don't think the UK should be putting so much of their money into US Treasuries when they could be spending that on improving the infrastructure and the public facilities for some of the British people. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So right now, there was a UST auction a few weeks ago, and the Federal Reserve actually bought up most of that debt because they didn't find that many foreign buyers. So it's going to be really interesting when the markets open again on Monday to see what happens to those US Treasury yields. But I really don't think the economy for the US is in a really good place. Not so long ago, China opened their digital cross-border payment system, and that's now seeing more and more trade being done, less and less reliant on the dollar, with all those BRICS nations who are using this to trade. You've had the Brazilian Prime Minister visiting China recently, openly saying that the US actions on the tariffs are causing Brazil to look more and more towards China for trade. I was in Beijing. You can check out the live stream. I spoke to a delegation of Africans from Liberia. They were singing the praise of China, saying how great African trade is with China. So it's all looking more and more positive for China and less positive for the US at this point in time. Anyway, I think I've said enough for today. I need to go. Time's getting on. I've got to be at a wedding at 4 o'clock, so I must dash. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I love reading through your comments and seeing your opinions. If you've got any ideas of sort of topics I can talk about in future videos, let me know about that as well. But from Beijing, here in China's capital city, for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.